Hey guys, I'm Nate. Welcome to Character Building. So this is my very first video and I wanted to start by showing you my shop. I've been building it since February of 2020. It is now end of May 2020. So it's been about 3 to 4 months and I'm not done with the shop yet. And so that's part of the point. I wanted to show where I'm at with the shop and some of the projects I've already done in the shop and kind of introduce you to some of the things I'll be doing on the YouTube channel, and hopefully you can follow along with me. So there's no perfect place to start in my shop. I want to show you my ultimate workstation. I want to show you the French cleat work that I'm doing. I know everybody's French cleat to death in these shop tours, but I've got a couple of pretty cool modules that I think are you'll be interested in, and maybe give you some ideas, some inspiration, and do something cool in your shop too. So speaking of the French cleats, I thought I'd start with a closet. I know, not a big deal, right? But it's a closet that's completely French cleats, and when I'm done with it, the doors will even have French cleats, which will have modules on it too. So I'm kind of making this so I can customize it, move things around, and format it to the future, right? Like, that's the point of French cleats. You can always move things around. You can, as your shop evolves, your space evolves, you can evolve with it. Right? One of the first things I did was French cleat the wall, of course, but I built these shelving units for quart paint cans and any spray cans, chalk line, stuff like that. And then on the sides, because I still need room for bulk items, I built these shelving units with the French cleat on the back side at about 15 by 14 inches so that I can just fit these in. I've got foam insulation and a bunch of other things. So these can move up and down, go wherever you want. And so what I intend to do with this closet is build double doors, solid doors. I'll have hanging modules on the outside, hanging tools on them, things like that. And then even as you open them up, there will be doors or modules on the inside that will hold items like, your smaller stain samples or brushes or things of that nature. Moving on to one of my earlier French cleat modules, I've got this sanding station, router station, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure what to call this thing. But it's got all these removable shelves for your hand sanding paper. It's got a spot for my trim routers, my jigsaw, belt sander, orbital sander, of course, and then a bunch of Dremel items. I'm just learning to carve with the Dremels and play around with those, which is pretty fun. This is the first module I built when I first did my French cleats. You can see it is like a totally raw state, and I intend to make a better clamp rack. My intent was just to be able to, well, there's not much to say about this thing, so we're going to move on. Oh, but I do have a fun little one. With French cleats, I love these things because you can do anything. So I had my rigid shop vac bag that hung onto the side of the rigid vacuum. I just made a little holder for it. That's all. This thing comes in so handy because whenever I'm vacuuming up my shop, I just pick out whichever accessory I want, and everything's just handy and it's right there. So one of the principles that I wanted to apply when I was building out my shop was that I would have minimal doors, drawers. I didn't want things to be put away. I want things to just be open. If I want my drill, I just go get the drill. If I want the micro pinner, I just pick up the micro pinner. Skill saws, same thing. So I cut these slots in here for the blade to slip through so that can sit nice and flat. This one happens to have my track saw attachment on it, so it doesn't quite slide in, but I can cut a slot right here, which I intend to do. This thing's not done, it's sort of a prototype. But this is just one example of, whatever you want to do with your shop. You see a lot of drill holders out there with the battery chargers on them. They have to be right near an outlet, something like that. I came up with a different solution that worked for me. I think this is, a really good module that I can just kind of pick and go with whatever I'm using. And these are the most commonly used tools in my shop. And these hardware racks, I know they're super basic. As a matter of fact, this one is just a plastic miscellaneous hardware rack I got in, like an estate sale or a yard sale or something like 9 years ago. I never used it until when I started to, organize and build my shop out. And just by putting this in sort of a cubby that I can hang on the wall and I can move it around wherever I want, I use this all the time. I found my nuts, my bolts, my washers, my cotter pins, gaskets, things like that. A bunch of stuff is in here. Machine screws that I would normally not use, and now that it's organized, I know where it is, and I utilize it. And then this thing is also super handy. So as I went through my rough old storage garage is essentially what it was, I organized this whole thing, and this allowed me to basically just go to it. I know where things are. I know I'm going to get a bunch of washers out of this. I know I'm going to get springs out of this. I know I'm going to get hinges out of these. And so I know where they are now, and when an idea pops in my head, I know where to go. I got it, and organization for me is key. Okay, so moving counterclockwise around the shop, I've got my lumber wall. So in my previous version of this garage, when it was basically just a storage garage, this was the lumber wall as well. But I didn't have any French cleats on it. I didn't have any plywood that I could mount things to or make custom brackets. And this is just insane for me. This is awesome. So at one point I've had as many as 70 studs just in the bottom section. And then I've got my trim, I've got some old decking, I've got some old siding, things I'm going to be doing projects with. But as you can see, it's just a wall of lumber, and it's totally out of the way. It takes up no more than 14 inches of depth, and the wall is 8 feet tall, and then it's about 16 feet long. So to squeeze in and organize lumber on this wall as much as I've been able to do here, for me is huge. All right, so this is my lumber cart. So you've probably seen this on Pinterest, or you've seen it in different YouTube videos or whatnot, but I've had this for about 5-6 years or something, and this was a carryover from when my garage was a storage garage. The thing is awesome. The one thing I will say is it's kind of starting to fall apart because it was basically a prototype at the time. And then the other thing is it fits so much plywood, but when I bring my plywood in, it's difficult to cut on it. So one of my future videos is going to be to build like a homemade panel saw. So I want to make something that I can basically take apart, hang it on the French cleats on the wall somewhere, and then reassemble it right in place and just run a skill saw on a track and cut some of these sheet goods down before I run it through the table saw and the chop saw and things of that nature. But it is on casters, some pretty heavy duty casters. So it's fairly simple to wheel around, and it's got these cubbies on the side, so you can fit different things in it. And of course, it's not done yet. Like I said, my shop is not completed yet. It's still an evolution in progress. The other thing I want to mention about this corner is, of course, it's all plywood sheathed, but you don't see any French cleats on the walls. I will apply French cleats to all of these walls. I'll trim out the window, and then maybe once I'm done with some of the lumber that's on this lumber wall and I can make some more space, I'll move some of the lumber up to the upper section. I can take that lumber cart, move it over to a different side of the shop, and utilize the alcove for tools. Maybe those can be on wheels as well. I've thought about one of those carousels with a scroll saw, a drill press, and maybe a grinder wheel or something like that. Or I can have a flip top drill press and a planer on the other side. Those are some of the tools I don't have. I basically have
chop table, compressor, router table, and a bunch of hand tools. So I'm not a full wood shop just yet, but it's an evolution and progress, and that's what I want to share along my process and the journey. Alright guys, so by now in the video you might have seen glimpses of this. This is my ultimate workstation. This is the heart of my shop. I've got my chop saw, I've got my router table embedded into the back, and I've got my table saw embedded here too. A couple of tool drawers. These are my most commonly used, shallow drawer right at the top. I've got some ratchets and wrenches and things of that nature. I've got some hand tools like snips and wonder bars and a hammer and things. And I've got this deeper drawer that originally was for the majority of my sanding tools and my small routers and things. But this is pretty much empty now because I've got them up on the French cleats. So this drawer is not doing much. Now, this ultimate workstation, I have to not take all the credit for this, but I modified it to fit my needs and some of my ideas. I first got inspiration from a guy named, if I'm not butchering the name, Scott Stecker or Sector, and I'll link his YouTube video below. He's got a great ultimate workstation, similar but not the same. He built it out of 2x4s. I built mine all out of plywood, and there's some differences. It's on locking casters, and then from there, I also want to give a shout out to Wood Shop Junkies. This guy Gene from South Africa, guy's a wizard. Just like Travis from Shop Nation said, the guy's a wood wizard, and he made a ultimate workstation. He's got a, I think, 8-part video series of it, and I watched every second of it. It was awesome. And I will give him the credit for this fold down chop saw. So essentially what this is, flip the clips, drop this down, and then you've got a panel that makes this whole space a nice flat workstation. And of course it's completely flush. And then I can just move this around as needed. I can show you guys the back side of the workstation. So everything's on dust containment or dust collection. I've got a rigid shop vacuum, and then one of those Home Depot Bucket Boss dust collector. So I'll give that guy Scott credit for this manifold system. He has this on his ultimate workstation. So Scott, I stole this from you, but thanks for the inspiration. And essentially these are like your blast gates. So if you want to open or close, whatever, you can open and close your chop saw, your table saw, your router table, or there's even a port for shop vac hose. So if I want to shop vac the shop or the workstation or something like that, you can do it. So of course I've got my compressor down at the bottom. What I'm going to end up doing is hard piping this with copper tubing and putting ports around the ultimate workstation so that you can just plug in an air hose wherever you need to, or wherever's most convenient for you out of the way. And then I'll put a door on it, and I'll soundproof the cavity that it's sitting in, and I'll make that little roll air, that quiet roll air compressor, that much more quiet inside the workstation. And then here I've got a power strip, a 6-way power strip. Everything is basically one heavy duty extension cord running to an old Bosch radio, which I've got 2 power strips connected to, and then I've got my iVac, so that when you turn on any one of the tools, the vacuum goes on. That's connected to one of the power strips, pulling power from that. I've got this open spot here, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but that's probably going to be another video. So whether I do a fold down drill press, or I just do some pull out drawers, or some pantry type drawers, something vertical that just slide out, and I've got all these accessories and bits in it or something. I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet, but I'm hoping to make another video on that. So on the back side of the workstation, of course I've got my router table embedded into the workstation. I have a open cavity down here that I'm going to build a drawer, full pull-out drawer for, put a bunch of router accessories over there. And then I've got these cubbies with all these organizers. I'm sure you've seen these at the local box store. So I wanted a place to just have, you know, right when I need my brad nails, I can just go to one of those cubbies and I can pick it up. Right when I need a 1 5/8" screw, I can go to one of those cubbies and pick it up. So everything's nice and organized and just kind of everything's in its place. The other thing I want to show you is, speaking of the French cleats, I've got this router bit organizer, router bit shelf. So essentially I can take this, put it right on the French cleat wall, or I can take it off, pop it on my Ultimate Workstation, or take that off, put it on the French cleat wall, put something else here that makes a little bit more sense in the future. So that's the versatility of the French cleats, and that's why, one of the reasons why I love them. Hey, so now sandwiched between the chop saw and my my little router caddy there, I've got my charging station. So when I want to charge a battery, I can just plug it in there. When I need it, I'm good to go. And this is my power strip that's plugged into the Bosch radio, and then I've got my iVac plugged into this. So again, every time this draws power, the shop vac will start and run the dust containment system. And then I've just got a little caddy here, so when I need to, I can store my drills away, and they're right next to my chop saw, so it's kind of like I make a cut and then I assemble and everything's right here. And this is the most common place where I walk past on a daily basis, so you know, if I need a drill, it's all right here.
So that's my shop, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I love my Ultimate Workstation. I love my shop the way it is now, and I really just wanted to share that with everybody. I love this shop woodworking community with all these different YouTube channels. I've been watching tons of it, and I'll share a bunch of different YouTube channels that I've been personally following along. Bent's Woodworking, Shop Nation, Woodshop Junkies, things like that. Of course, I like to make stuff, right, Bob? But you know, some of these smaller outfits. So I'll post some of those in the description below, and I hope you guys follow along with those shops as well. Okay, well that wraps things up here. So thanks a lot. Thanks for staying to the end, and I hope to see you in the next one.